Thank you for joining us for another great episode of The Shine. I'm your host, Erin Couch, and I'm joined by Gracie Benson, the producer, Shelby Shelton, the editor, and Emma Campbell, the sound.
Thank you for joining The Shine, a podcast featuring some of the University of North Alabama's best alumni and friends from the College of Arts, Sciences, and Engineering. Today we are joined by Roderick Robinson, MD, who studies in pediatrics, neonatal, prenatal medicine in Atlanta, Georgia. Robinson is the University of North Alabama's class of 1983.
How are you doing today?
Doing just fine. How are y'all doing?
We're doing good. Thank you. So starting for question number one, where did your passion begin? How did you know you wanted to go into this field?
Well, I mean, it kind of goes way back. I've always said I wanted to go to medical school since I was 9 or 10 years old. The pediatric part, really, I've always gravitated to kids from back when I worked at the pool down on Royal Avenue to volunteering in college and moving forward. Didn't really know what this field was until my third year med school. I didn't even know it existed, and I got a job there actually drawing blood gases. That evolved into making a lot of good friends and kind of enjoying being in that environment. One thing led to another, and that's what I wanted to do. When I was in medical school, originally I wanted to be an OBGYN, then an ER doctor, then a pediatrician, then this. So it wasn't that I went straight to this. It kind of evolved over time.
And now I'm going to ask you some rapid fire questions.
If you could be a color, which one would you be?
Well, if I'm going to be a color and I'm a member of Kappa Psi Incorporated, I'd be red.
Do you prefer dogs or cats?
Definitely dogs, never cats.
Netflix or YouTube?
YouTube.
Sweet or salty?
Salty.
Summer or winter?
Definitely summer.
Comedy or horror?
Definitely comedy. Don't want to watch scary movies.
Me either. Don't worry.
They don't really scare me. It's just I shake my head and keep moving.
What made you switch from being an OBGYN and ER? Like, how did you want to be an ER doctor, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, I mean, ER is exciting. It's shift work. I kind of saw myself driving around in the SUV and doing my ER shifts and just kind of living that life. But this was a little more exciting, a little more focused, something I felt like I could master a little better. So that's why I kind of shifted. The OB was a little too focused for me. The gynecology part I didn't really like. Delivering babies was fun. And when I actually did half of my med school at University of Alabama in Birmingham. And then when my wife, who was a couple of years ahead of me, graduated, that's when I moved to the University of Tennessee in Memphis and did my clinicals there. And it was a very busy maternal service there. So I must have delivered 30 babies in a month as a student. That was fun. But gynecology part, I wasn't a big fan of.
Well, that does sound exciting. How did your experience at the University of North Alabama shape your path towards medicine?
Well, it made me buckle down and realize that's what I wanted to do. Growing up in Florence, there wasn't, babies being born actively in Florence. I mean, I was born in Florence, but there's no big maternity service there. Coming out of high school, did a lot of things. Didn't really know where I wanted to go to school. Ended up going to UNA. Played a lot of baseball the first year, pledged fraternity the first year. So really wasn't focused on academics, to be honest. And as I progressed and matriculated through UNA, I realized I had to be very serious about what I was going to do and very intentional. So I knew I wasn't going to be a professional baseball player. I got redshirted as a freshman, so decided that probably wasn't the avenue I needed to take. So I stopped doing that and just kind of got more focused. And I think being at UNA, even though it's remote from the medical schools, meaning, the medical schools in Alabama and Birmingham and Mobile, being there and talking to some of the teachers and, them kind of saying, you got to get your act together, and being around students who were like-minded and wanted to do certain things, that actually was helpful as well.
You said you played baseball here at UNA. What other activities did you participate here?
Too many. I think it was a Supreme Court justice at the SGA. president of my fraternity for 2 years. I was a regional president of my fraternity for the state of Alabama for 3 years.
That's a lot. Did you
Yeah,
participate in any homecoming activities or like the fountain if y'all had it?
Oh, I don't remember having a lot of homecoming activities per se. I remember it's silly now. I'm on the foundation board and I'm also on the advisory council for arts and science. And one of the people that's on the foundation board with me, we were joking about it because I don't know if they still have Mr. and Miss UNA, but we were nominated for that. And my mother laminated that because it was in the paper, and I some kind of way I walked up on it a few years ago and just kind of chuckled about it. But
did you intern at any local hospitals here in Florence?
no, by the time, when I left UNA, was not ready to go, was not able to get into med school, my first application. I went to UAB and went to graduate school in embryology or in biology with a focus on embryology, then started med school. I was moonlighting in the ER at UAB and before med school, or volunteering, I should say. And then, once I got in med school, it was all about school. And I did my residency in Memphis and my fellowship in Baltimore.
You said that you had trouble getting into medical schools, and my sister is a nurse too, and she had a little trouble getting into. So what advice would you give to medical students or residents considering a career in neonatology?
Well, and that's why I actually am glad to be on the advisory council for arts and science. And you guys may be one of those guys, and that's great. My wife's one of those guys that was either valedictorian or salutatorian in high school, and they're going to be great. They're going to do whatever they want to do. It's going to be fabulous. I wasn't that person. Okay. I mean, I did okay. And out of high school, and I ended up doing okay in college, but I was not that person that went through UNA with a 4.0 or 3.5. That was not me. And that's okay now. But when I was 21 graduating, it wasn't the best thing for self-image. So now I take some pride in telling people. I guess I was just stubborn enough to think that I could go to medical school no matter what people were saying to me, either being truthful or discouraging or whatever, or encouraging when they just had a blind eye to what was my record looked like at the time. And so now I take credit in the fact that I'm in a position where I can help maybe that kid that's struggling for whatever reason. And sometimes it could be too much of a burden from the outside, meaning, money or having to have a job or whatever. The people who are getting, Rhodes Scholars and Fulbright Scholars, that's great. And we need those people. But who's there to help that kid that's somewhere in the middle, that's struggling to kind of get in, or may have been rejected the first time or second time or third, whatever? Kind of take pride in the fact that maybe I can be the voice in the room saying, hey, don't forget about pulling this person up. The people who are already up there really don't need a lot of help. And it's easy to get on board with them because they don't really need a lot of help. But it's tougher to get on board with that kid that may be somewhere in the middle with the desire to do a lot, but struggling. That goes into everything, not just medicine.
Thank you for that. Can you describe what a day in the life looks like when you're at the hospital?
So neonatology is newborn intensive care. It's preemies, sick babies. We see normal, healthy babies too, because pediatricians don't come to the hospital like they used to. But that's not really what we like to do. We like to take care of the sickest ones, the challenging ones. That's why we're in it. Some people say the scary ones, but it's really not scary most of the time for us because it's what we do. So my day involves being on call starting at 6 a.m. Doesn't mean I have to go in or have to answer the phone or anything, but I'm on the hook to be the person in charge starting at 6. Usually that ends around either 4 or 7, depending on the day. I go in. We don't have an office. We only see babies in an ICU setting. So we go in, examine our babies, around with the nurses, and spend a good bit of time charting, working, on the computer and such. And if there's things that need to be done, we will do it, be it procedures or talking to parents who are, obviously scared to death and just trying to keep everything in order. And I do that probably my practice. Some people do shifts, so many shifts a month. and it's moving more towards that now today more than ever because people want to have work-life balance. Ours is more of a Monday through Sunday thing and then maybe get a few days of rest after that.
Mm-hmm. Out of all the cases you have worked, which moment of your career that stood out to you?
I saw that when you sent me one case just kind of stays with me. Not that people still talk about it. We had a baby at one of our hospitals. We covered 3 hospitals here in Atlanta, but one of them in particular that we had a baby who had fluid around the heart. And that's very unusual. And it's just not something you see maybe once or twice a career. And that's fine because you don't want to have to go through this. It was one of those things where the baby's blood pressure was getting low. He wasn't doing well. He basically was getting worse and worse right in front of us. And fortunately, I have good cardiology people who help with those babies who can do ultrasounds of the heart. And they saw that. But it was up to me to stick a needle there and try to pull the fluid off, help the baby better and save the kid. So, a lot of times, we say we're saving lives, but that was just an opportunity where it truly did probably save that kid's life. And it's funny because his name was John Q, just like the movie that was made about a heart transplant a long time ago. But that was really that kid's name. And I didn't see him. Apparently, he came back to the hospital to visit at one of the reunions. And it was just something that it was one of those things that happened in the wee hours of the morning. Mm-hmm. The baby just all of a sudden started doing poorly and one thing led to another. And I just remember, when the cardiologist was there showing me where to put the needle, but not every day you have to put a needle near or in somebody's heart, sacs around in the heart. So that was kind of scary. Right. And I just remember finishing and looking. When I finished, I turned around. There was like 10 people looking in the door watching because nobody had ever seen that before and probably hadn't since then.
Was that scary for you, seeing all those people around you looking?
I didn't notice they were there. All I know is just talking to the cardiologist who had the ultrasound probe on the baby, showing me where to go and looking at that screen, seeing where to go. I didn't know the people were there until after I was done. I think they were probably more afraid than I was.
What was your emotions like? What did you feel like in that moment?
Just focus, get it done. Don't screw it up. My wife laughs at me because I go back to sports a lot because, I played sports all my life up till that first year at UNA, through that first year. And, I was actually a place kicker in addition to playing offensive lineman in high school. And it's kind of like same thing. You see these kickers on TV kicking for a win or tie the game. You really don't hear anything. You're just so focused. Nothing around you really matters. And that's kind of the way I was. I didn't have, you asked what emotion. You don't want to screw it up. You're a little fearful of that, but you just can't be. There's just no can't in it.
Mm-hmm. Looking back on your career, what are you most proud of?
I think just the consistency, being in a group and with a group of people, thrived on trying to do the best job we could do. What I do, babies come out very small, very premature. Mm-hmm. You're trying to get them as close to normal by the time they go home as you can. And just having that consistency, being in a very well-practiced, well-read group, stays on top of things, and has done a good job building 3 hospitals up. Came here, there was 3 of us. Now there's 9 of us and like 10 practitioners. So we went from 3 people in my practice to now over 20. Just being consistent, growing these 3 hospitals and trying to do the best we can, taking care of these babies.
Right. We all know your job can be emotionally taxing. How do you manage stress and maintain your well-being?
Kind of like what I was telling you about the case. People think, oh my God, your job is so sad. It's really not. I mean, we unfortunately have things that happen and deaths, if you will, but it's not like it's a weekly thing or a monthly thing or a bi-monthly thing. It's actually unusual. And so emotionally, it's your job. It's your responsibility. You don't walk around being very emotional every day. You do what you have to do. Do some things affect you more than others? Well, of course, we're all human. But I just don't walk around thinking, oh, this is so sad. And people, when I tell them what I do, a lot of them be like, oh, that's really sad. No, it's actually not, because most of the time, a lot of those babies go home. A lot of them, now babies are born 18 weeks before the due date, which is crazy amount of time. It's 4.5 months. To see a baby walk out of there, that doesn't happen much now. That's not what I'm saying. But when it does happen, you're just kind of amazed. Even if you've been there for those 4 months, you're still pretty amazed that that could happen.
Right. What are some of the biggest advancements in neonatal care you witnessed during your career?
Well, I'm showing my age now. When I was in medical school in the first part of my residency, there's a protein in the lungs that's called surfactant. And actually it helps the lungs to, stay open, oxygen to be delivered to the lungs, et cetera. And that we produce inherently. It's in our bodies right now. But when you're a premature baby, you don't have the ability to make that protein or that substance. And
Right.
so we have to give it to babies. Well, when I was a resident, they had just started actually producing it. So there was like 3 or 4 different kinds. And then they figured out which ones were the best ones, which is what we use today. And then in my fellowship at Johns Hopkins Hospital, actually one of my mentors or professors in the department was one of the people, and he was a fellow that actually is on the team that discovered that. So to see that happen was interesting and fulfilling, but also too, when I started, a place where I did my residency in Tennessee was a very large unit run by a man named Sheldon Coronis, who's one of the godfathers of this field. And he actually was a big proponent on prematurity and kind of testing the limits of what we call viability. When I say viability, what that is that's the lowest age that a baby could be saved. Mm-hmm. And he was always on the cutting edge of, what's the lower limit. So when I started, a mother or a woman who was 24 weeks premature, that was like the earliest you could really try to do something for a baby. And now we're down to 22 weeks, which you think that's 2 weeks. Well, those 2 weeks are critical. Mm-hmm. For lung development. So those 2 things are probably the biggest 2 things that I've seen.
I noticed you mentioned that you studied at Johns Hopkins, and correct me if I'm wrong, Johns Hopkins is a big hospital.
A little bit, yes. So when I went to Tennessee I was at the University of Alabama, finished my basic science in the 2 years there. Did some research, and then my wife matched at the University of Tennessee, so I decided to move with her, mm-hmm. which was probably the best thing I ever did. Was able to really connect with a lot of friends that we still are in contact with to this day. Went to med school with them, and then I ended up doing my residency there because she was a resident and then chief resident in the Department of Medicine and internal medicine. And so when I went to pediatrics, there was a man named Russell Chesney and his wife and Dr. Coronas, all those people. When I decided to do neonatology, they were all like, you should apply to these schools. Now, granted, I'm still that kid from UNA who didn't get in the first time, who maybe didn't have the best transcript right out of UNA. I'm still that person, right? Just a few years older. But they encouraged me to try. And so I ended up getting offers for a fellowship at 5 really, really, really good places, one of which was Johns Hopkins Hospital. And my oldest daughter at the time was 1.5 years old, had recently been diagnosed with epilepsy. We made a conscious decision to go there because the man who was in charge of the epilepsy department was one of the godfathers of epilepsy and seizures treatment and disorders. And also I had an opportunity to go there and do my fellowship. So that's kind of how I got there. Ended up being a great 3 years to help my daughter. My wife is on faculty there, and it was really a privilege to go to a place that's, considered by some to be the best hospital in the country. Mm-hmm. And to be around all that history of all the different things in medicine that were started or discovered there, and being around people who you see books with their names on them. You're actually riding on the elevator with them, or you're passing them in the hallway, or that person won the Nobel Prize. That's a privilege to be in those people's presence.
I noticed you were working in Atlanta. What made you want to go to Atlanta for your job?
So Atlanta came about as, when I was in my last year of fellowship, you get trained to be a physician scientist. But I realized, with my daughter and our family situation, it'd probably be better for me to just get a job and try to be, to provide for the family. Atlanta was somewhere we kind of always talked about. and being from from Florence, and my wife's from Northeast Alabama. Mm-hmm. So it gave us opportunity to come close to home, but not go back home. But it was at least driving distance. And at the time I had a great grandmother still living, 2 grandmothers living, and my wife had grandmother and all that stuff and siblings. So it just gave us an opportunity to be close to home, but not really go home. And then Atlanta's Atlanta. So that made it pretty easy. And then the job I took was a very selective group at the time. So I was fortunate to get an offer from them.
How did your time at UNA prepare you for your future success?
Like I said before, I think being around the people I was around and having great friends, great fraternity brothers, and just learning how to be a little resilient. I mean, I was still at home, so I can't say, I was out there on just making it work, walking uphill both ways to school every day. No, I had it pretty good. I can't complain. But just being around those people, some of them, which I just saw last weekend at homecoming, and some I try to keep up with, and it was just a great time.
Well, thank you, Mr. Robertson, for your time. We've enjoyed hearing from you, and we are very thankful you decided to help us with this podcast.
No problem, guys. Anything I can do to help, and just stay encouraged and keep moving forward. It's the best thing I can tell you.
Thank you.
All right, guys, take care.